Disney's latest children's film is set to lose up to $47 million, and I'm going to show you how it probably will lose even more. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about this film. It's called Strange World, and I'm going to talk to you about how the media, the leftist Marxist media, the shill media, is trying to make excuses for this. You can hear from Bob Iger himself, the new CEO of Disney. He was the CEO before. He left and came back. And so he's talking about, well, you know what, guys? Maybe we should be a little bit more concerned about culture and let's step back a little bit. I'm going to talk to you about that, his statement. And also, I'm going to show you the real numbers of why this movie is a total cluster. So let's get in here real quickly. This is from TMZ. We're not going to cover this. I'll just put this up here on the screen so you can see how they're already slanting it. They're saying, hey, hard flop at box office, LGBTQ character to be scapegoated. No, that's actually the reason people don't want wokeness. And it's not just that, it's also other things in this film dealing with stuff like the environment. It's a heavy environmental film talking about how man's screwing up the planet and how we need to do better. Well, the fact of the matter is people are tired of being lectured to by Hollywood. These issues, whether you believe it or not, are now political issues, and we are sick and tired of it. So, Zero Hedge has a very good article. It says here, get woke, go broke. We already know that. Disney's LGBT kids film, Strange World, projected to lose $147 million. And stick around, I'm gonna go through all the numbers and show you it can be a lot worse than that, twice as much as that, if it goes really south from here. So here's from Tyler Durden. And I'm gonna jump down here to the bottom here. We're just talking about the wokest children's film ever. That's what they're calling it, the wokest children's film ever, because of its prominent gay teen protagonist. Overt woke propaganda is a big seller these days, said nobody. Though to be fair, Disney started production on the film in 2021, when it might have assumed that progressive ideology could still be imposed on the American public. Now, this article gets into some really good details, and I'm going to share with you those details right here. Pro-woke producers and writers have admitted in the past that their agenda has to be implanted into popular legacy franchises like Star Wars, Ghostbusters, Star Trek, and Marvel in order to trick people into the theaters. Whenever they create original stories rooted in diversity politics, they fail miserably. It's a rare moment of self-awareness for leftists. The problem is that they never seem to ask themselves, why is this the case? Or is it perhaps they just don't care that the vast majority of audiences find these movies repellent? The real reason is this, and it goes to Romans 1, is that people don't want to deal with this internally. God put something inside of us that says this is not something that we want, that is right, that is okay, especially when it deals with kids. And therefore, no matter what kind of propaganda you put out there, instinctively, based on the Bible, Romans 1, that is not ever going to be accepted in society. It may be to an extent, but in our Puritan-based society, going back to the Pilgrims to where we are now, it's still ingrained very much in our culture, and parents don't want to see that. He says here, maybe it's because the productions are all the same, with the same shallow messaging, true, with the same methodical and political casting choices, and the same ideological preaching. When your singular focus is propaganda, it's nearly impossible to tell a good story with characters that people can relate to. All of that is 100% true. Now I'm going to come back to this particular article because he gets into some things here that are really, really good, and I want to leave it for the end. It says here also here, I mentioned this about the climate change. It's also about, the climate change allegory from Hollywood, packed with just about every woke trope one can think of, including the final lesson of the film, which is a futuristic lecture on not letting the past, tradition, history, heritage hold us back from the inevitable utopia of progress. Abandoning the old world and long-held principles always leads to happiness in the new Disney fairy tale dynamic. Well, tell that to the Pilgrims on the first year they came here. They tried that whole thing they tried in the 60s, the whole commune system where you share and you were supposed to get along. Well, they almost starved to death because people were lazy and they weren't pulling their weight. It wasn't until the year later when they brought in capitalism and they gave people land and let them man that land or till that land the way they wanted to, and then they could sell their own crops from their own property, and therefore that set forth a explosion of growth in America and set forth the foundations of this country, and that's what it was. So this whole utopian society is not real. It's never worked. It will never work. It is just a myth, and they need to get out of that mentality. So let's talk about this film in terms of its actual gross. Now, here's a very interesting article that I want you to watch and listen. Read between the lines in this article here. This article says, Strange World is to lose $147 million. Why a theatrical release was best decision for doomed tune, not for streaming on Disney Plus, as Bob Iger takes over CEO from Bob Chapek. They're saying here is, okay, this is going to fail anyway, but it needed to go into theaters, not for profit reasons, not for common sense reasons, but because of other reasons. And they try and explain away why it was best to go to theaters, even though it's going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars potentially in losses. So it's really crazy. So they go in here and say, it's really interesting. I'm going to paraphrase. What they essentially say here in this article is that there were political reasons why they had to go into the theater to protect people's feelings, to protect narratives. And if you want to see that, watch this. Why did Disney go theatrical on a movie they knew had bad audience diagnostics and not go to streaming? This guy here said that they talked to someone behind the scenes and they asked these questions. Why didn't this film go to streaming when you knew it was probably going to lose money? Well, this was also back when Bob Chapek was in there. And it says here, it's clear in Iger's move to put the distribution and P&L decisions, that's profit loss decisions, back in the hands of the studio's creative heads, the people who actually steer much product, an indication that smarter creative and financial decisions are afoot at the studio, which is saying here that before they weren't doing smart decisions, but now they're going to do it in more capable hands who understand profitability. Goes on here to say this. So if Disney's new Strange World with its problematic title was a dud, why did it not go straight to streaming? Check this out here in red. Had Strange World gone straight to Disney Plus, it would have been a PR nightmare for the studio, particularly in the wake of Chapek's Florida, quote unquote, don't say gay quagmire, which, by the way, the bill never said that. That's a lie. A strict Disney Plus release for Strange World would indicate that Burbank, California studio is giving a lesser release and a lesser profile for a big movie with a gay character versus a global theatrical launch. This is to protect a narrative. Forget the money. We don't care about that. The narrative is more important. What these leftists, what these Marxists think, and have been saying for years, is that the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. They don't care about anything else. Get the narrative out there. Get the message out there. We don't care about anything else. Money doesn't matter to these people. Goes on here to say here, in addition, a straight to Disney Plus release for Strange World would be a continued slap in the face to its animation team. So egos, which have seen years and years of their life's work intended for full-on theatrical go to streaming. For instance, during the whole, past couple years, for obvious reasons, the coup, things went to streaming because people weren't going to theaters. Well, so those numbers can be what they are, but they want to say, hey guys, you know what? We know your last 2 films, 3 films that would have gone to the theaters to give you a boost in your ego and your whatever, your hard work to be seen by more people. We're going to put it into streaming, which probably no one will see it. And the numbers are more buried because it's funny money because the math is, mixed in with other services. So sorry guys, but this time we're going to put it out there. It's going to lose money, but at least you'll get some credit. So that's what they're saying. And so this whole thing is about not decisions about profitability. It's about narratives and egos. And that's what it's really all about. All right, now let's go to our spreadsheet that you may have seen before in our Woman King series, where we showed you how Woman King was going to lose money. Well, it's right now looking at an $8 million loss. And it's out of the theater, so we'll see what happens when it gets re-released, when the Oscars come around and DVD releases. But it's going to be hard pressed to make that money back. So it's definitely a flop. So we applied the same spreadsheet to this new film. And we see Top Gun, Maverick, is killing it at a $1.146 billion profit. Incredible there. So let's go to Strange World. And the budget on this. Essentially, what you need to have to determine if it's going to make money, because the standard rule is 2 times your budget will be your profitability. I get that from this article right here. It's pretty much a standard formula. It says here, you can see it for yourself. I'll leave links below, but that's what I'm going off of. And so with that, if we look at the baseline of 135 million, which is the low, I got that from here, that the budget is anywhere from 135 to 180 million. So what I did was I basically made 2 different scenarios, a high and a low, one for 135 and one for 180. And then I did a median of the average to see, just give or take what it could make if it hits somewhere in the middle. I also have one for a projection based on what it needs to make to basically get the exact $147 million loss. And lastly, I have one more category, what it needs to do at the box office to make a buck, make $1 to make a profit. So if you look at these numbers right here, you'll see right now that based on their projection of it losing $147 million, it has to make $190 million just to be at the point where it can lose 147. The best case for them is for it to make a profit, and it's going to have to make about $327 million to make a reasonable profit of about $1 million. And so Bob Iger sees this, and he actually went before his employees recently, and he answered some questions. And he said he wants them to quiet down culture wars and respect the audience. This is what he said here about making things too political.
Here's a virtual question. Many cast members had wished that Disney stayed out of politics. Will Disney stay out of making political statements?
I think there's a misperception here about what politics is. And I think that some of the subjects that have proven to be controversial as it relates to Disney have been branded political, and I don't necessarily
They're political because you made them political.
Believe they are. I don't think when you are telling stories and attempting to be a good citizen of the world that
What does being a good citizen of the world mean?
a good citizen of the world that's political. Just not how I view it. Do I like the company being embroiled in controversy? Of course not. It can be distracting, and it can have a negative impact on the company. And to the extent that I can work to kind of quiet things down, I'm going to do that. But I think it's important to put in perspective what some of these subjects are and not just simply brand them political.
But the problem, Bob, is that it is political. Let's go back to the Zero Hedge article and go down to the bottom here. And they close this out very well and wrap this thing up nicely. He says here, there are many successful films with gay characters in the US and globally. It is not necessarily an indicator of box office poison. However, American audiences and foreign audiences alike are not welcoming of LGBT content for children. In the past decade, the LGBT issue transformed from a predominantly social issue into something else entirely. See, Bob Iger is still stuck a decade ago. The gay movement and trans movement is now a political movement. It absolutely is. So that question to Bob Iger was spot on, even though he tried to gloss it off. They have made the sexual into the political with an agenda far beyond equality, which they have already achieved. Exactly. This is another big issue and another topic for discussion, that equality is already there. So basically, they're just making up stuff to have more power and influence. Audiences are aware of this and do not want their children propagandized, with many parents wanting to wait until their kids are older before having to explain obscure sexual habits. It's a line that audiences will not allow Hollywood to cross, as the Strange World box office calamity proves. So what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in finding out how Disney lost nearly half of its market share in less than a year, check out this video right here.